I'm Anton Enos. This is SBS World News. Good evening. In the early hours of tomorrow morning, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin will meet face-to-face for the first time in 6 years. The US president hopes the talks in Alaska will lead to a ceasefire in Ukraine. The Russian leader has praised what he called sincere efforts by the US to end the war and floated the prospect of a nuclear arms deal. Among the officials already in Alaska is Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The talks are being closely watched around the world, including here in Australia. Kyiv and its European allies have urged President Trump not to make any deals that carve up Ukrainian territory and put the continent's long-term security at risk.
The United States bought Alaska from Russia in 1867. And since the location of this summit was announced, Russian state media has been using that trade as an example of how vast territories have long been sold, swapped and stolen, trying to justify Vladimir Putin's attempt to take Ukraine by force. At this Air Force base, the Russian president will face an American counterpart not all that interested in history, other than how he will be remembered. Donald Trump just wants a deal, and he thinks he can get one.
I think that President Putin would like to see a deal. You know, I've solved 6 wars in the last 6 months, a little more than 6 months now, and I'm very proud of it. I thought the easiest one would be this one. It's actually the most difficult.
He's already thinking about a potential second summit, this time involving Volodymyr Zelensky.
All I want to do is set the table for the next meeting, which should happen shortly. I'd like to see it happen very quickly, very shortly after this meeting. I'd like to see it actually happen maybe in Alaska, where we just stay because it's so much easier.
Yet it's not clear if President Putin would agree to that. Before departing for Anchorage, he praised President Trump's efforts to end the conflict, but hinted he has other goals for this meeting.
The current American administration is making, in my opinion, quite energetic and sincere efforts to stop the hostilities, stop the crisis, and reach agreements that are of interest to all parties involved in this conflict in order to create long-term conditions of peace between our countries, and in Europe and in the world as a whole, if we reach agreements in the area of control over strategic offensive weapons at the next stage.
He's referring to the potential renewal of the New START nuclear arms treaty due to expire in February, which would be an easy win for both sides, although do nothing to end the war in Ukraine. The meeting is due to begin at 11:30 a.m. local time, that's 5:30 a.m. Australian East Coast time on Saturday. The conversation will initially be a one-to-one, with interpreters the only other people in the room. Then the presidents will be joined by their respective delegations for a working lunch, Secretary of State Marco Rubio leading the American delegation, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov the Russian. Once discussions are over, there will be a press conference, potentially a joint one. The Kremlin says there are no plans to sign any documents after the meeting, warning it would be a mistake to predict what will happen. But Russia is keen to avoid new sanctions, meaning President Putin might feel the need to offer some token concessions.
If Putin realises being obstreperous, which is what he appears to have been, up until now, and pretty intransigent, actually could backfire for him, he might modulate and change things. He wants to have a good relationship with Trump. He wants to have a good relationship with the United States. But he also wants the capitulation of Ukraine.
Ukraine does not have a seat at the negotiating table, not yet anyway. Volodymyr Zelensky using the time to shore up support from European allies ahead of the difficult discussions to come.
There'll have to be some conversation about, territorial disputes and claims and what they're fighting over. All these things will be part of a comprehensive thing. But I think the president's hope is to achieve some stoppage of fighting so that those conversations can happen.
Trump says he thinks there's a 75% chance of success at the summit, but his definition of success could be very different to that of Ukraine. Ben Lewis, SBS World News.
For more on the summit, CNN reporter Maribel Gonzalez joined me earlier from Anchorage.
Usually, whenever there's any sort of these high stakes encounters, especially when it has to do with the U.S. arrival, there's a lot of strategizing. There's a lot of planning beforehand to discuss what will be discussed in the agenda and any possible outcomes. In this case, we learned very few details, at least public details. Even before today, we really did not have much of a notion of what exactly would be discussed during the summit.
There's been a lot of emphasis on this idea of the swapping of territories to give them peace in Ukraine. But to what extent do you think other factors will come into it as well, economic issues such as trade and sanctions?
The president has been threatening those sanctions if Russia does not agree to some sort of ceasefire in Ukraine. And we have been reporting today on the potential of this land swapping being part of the conversation. However, Ukraine is strongly opposed to any sort of negotiations, especially when they weren't invited to this summit.
A lot depends, Maribel, I think, on the vibe in the room. Is there a chance that if they don't hit it off right away, that your president, who's infamously volatile as a character, might just walk away?
You know, everything is possible. As we saw from his recent interaction with President Zelensky at the White House, it really could go any sort of direction. We saw that public display of tension between those two leaders. It's very difficult to say what will happen in this situation. We know and we have heard that the president of Russia has been very well prepared for this meeting, and the president feels he is confident as well entering this summit. So we're really just going to have to wait and see. There will be a press conference following their one-on-one meeting, and that is when we will really be able to gauge what came out of that summit.
A lot of this, of course, is guesswork, and there's been a lot of teasing, Maribel, about possible future meetings happening very soon with the European leadership, with President Zelensky. Has there been any hint about the timeline for those possible meetings?
Yeah, so no timeline yet, but what I can say is that the president said that if this meeting with Putin goes well tomorrow, then he will immediately schedule a second meeting. And in this one, he will be involving Ukrainian President Zelensky. Zelensky, we've hearing from sources, is not opposed to a trilateral meeting, but he is asking that Russia agree to a ceasefire before that meeting could even happen.
Okay, CNN's Maribel Gonzalez, good to speak to you.